Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. Howdy, chat. Howdy, folks. Howdy, folks. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome in. We're back to doing, PCA stuff. It's okay. We have... I promise we have the nice happy music and not the weird music today. Pay no attention to the weird music in the background. Where am I looking? That is my next question. Why is that my focus? That is strange. I'd rather my focus was up here. Yeah? Yeah, okay, there we go. There we go. That's more like it. Yeah, okay. Howdy, everyone. Howdy. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. We're doing PCA stuff. This is a follow-up to the last stream. If you've not seen the last stream, we talked about, like, the basics of PCA and what it is. There's a short that was meant to go up today, did not go up today. Your boy might have scheduled it ever so slightly wrong. Just 24 hours later than it should have gone up. So tomorrow, that's going up on YouTube. Don't worry about it too much. You don't really need to know in any great detail. But if you're watching the VOD of this, one of two things. Either, one, you can catch the VOD for the last stream. It'll be the one literally before this one. That gives a full breakdown. It's a little rambly. I think it's about 2 hours long. But it does go through all the major details of PCA, how to play the system, yada 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 yada. Given enough time, there should be at least one, if not multiple, shorter form actual YouTube videos rather than shorts. But there should be multiple, or at least a YouTube video that covers the basics of the system, right? So the stuff you need to know before you do start doing any of this. I've just realized, I do actually need to open the rules for myself. That would be a good idea. I'll open 1781. We won't open 1781, actually. I've realised we will not be opening that one because that has my actual government name on it. I'll open the basic. Wonderful. Yeah, you guys don't need to know my actual government name. That's probably not the best thing to be giving you all. Okay. So what we're doing today is character creation. And we are going to go through the whole thing. I will be making a character from both a character that I already have a concept for, and a character, we'll be making someone entirely brand new. I've done zero prep for this, for the new character. So, we will figure it out. But anyway, give her a second. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to be using Roll20 just as a basis for this. Hopefully, that might be a lot smaller than I was intending. Name. Hold on. Is that readable, chat? Can we see that? Do we need it bigger? I could do something funny. Yes. Oh, what the hell am I messing with? Oh, that's a game capture. We don't want that. Unlock that. Unlock this. Yeah, there we go. Let's just zoom that. Horrific. It's like this backwards ass way of doing this. Yeah, there we go. There we go. We can all see that? Yeah, we can all see his name. Yeah. All right, cool. So, the way that we do this, oh, that's gonna mess with this as well, isn't it? Hold on. Oh, it's huge! Oh no. Okay. Admittedly, you guys probably don't need to see the rulebook. We'll get a notepad up as... Whoa. Whoa. That's full of spoilers. Okay. Thanks for working like that, Windows. Thank you. Alright, well... Cancel. Can you just call that, like... Perfect. There we go. Now no one's getting spoiled about anything. Neat. Okay, I'll bring this up when we need it. But we'll use that for a little experiment later on. So, how do we do a character creation? Well, PCA is a game that really values storytelling, and that means it values you having a strong sense of character. What that basically means is if you don't have a strong character concept, you better work on getting one quick. You better work on getting that shit made, because if you don't, you're going to have a rough time. Now, it doesn't have to be a complicated one. I want to just nip something in the bud. When you start talking like this, as a GM, as a game designer, you start saying like, oh, you need to have a strong sense of character, and stuff like that. People hear, I need to have a full... I need to have like a full biography, I need to know every detail of that character's life, I need to know everything about them, from the color of their hair to their favorite music to the most embarrassing thing that happened to them in grade school. No, you don't need all of that. What you do need are... You need these things. So, motivation. This. This is the most important thing, right? If you don't know what your character wants, or what you want, okay? Because this isn't just a character thing, it's a character and you thing. Which is to say, if you know what your character wants, great, fantastic, awesome. You've got the most important bit down. That is like a solid 60% of your character. Because regardless of any other details, if you have an end goal, if you have an idea of where your character wants to go, what they want to be, what they want to do, it kind of doesn't really matter what else, to a certain degree, it doesn't really matter what else is going on with them, right? If you know, for example, that your character, regardless of any of their background details, regardless of anything else about them, you know that they want to, as a nice broad example, they want to save the world from the evil overlord. Great, fantastic. You already know that this is a character that is going to probably try and head out on a quest to rid the world of the evil overlord, which is probably what your GM has in mind. It might not be, but it's a pretty good shot. It leaves you a lot of room to grow, it leaves you a lot of room to develop, but here's the thing. You don't need to have this super strict and super fleshed out idea of Here's everything about my character. I think a lot of people hear that and are not corrected on it, and it drives them away from more story-driven games, because they think that the GM is expecting them to become like a top-shelf author overnight, and that is, of course, utterly unreasonable. I've got a couple of characters that I trot out in nearly every single game that I run, and a lot of the games that I play in. And their motivations change between games. Because of course they do. That's not at all unrealistic. But I've also been playing these characters for years, I know them inside out. When I'm making a new character, of course, it's harder to pin down the motivation because I don't really know what their whole deal is. And that does make it harder. But motivation is always the place that I start. Now, it doesn't have to be for you, but I find I think it's the most important thing to get nailed down. Once you know what your character wants, you have a direction that you can go in with your role-playing. So, this gives you direction. In character. But it's also a you thing. So, we all play... If you're watching this, you probably play tabletop role-playing games. You play it for a reason. And there are a great many reasons why people play role-playing games. Some people play them because they enjoy doing like the number crunch and all the math stuff, and some people really enjoy that. I do not get that myself. It's not something that I derive any joy from. When I do play those kinds of games, I do end up being a bit of a munchkin about it, and I gotta have the highest numbers. That said, I don't enjoy it. I do not enjoy it. I do that because I feel like if I don't do that, I am opening myself up to get my character killed, and that is the worst thing that can happen for me, is my character dying for no good reason. I think that's really lame. Just a sudden, unplanned end to a story, I find it really unsatisfying. There can be stories where having your character die, of course, that is, thematic, and it's good storytelling, but I think dying to a random goblin in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, yeah, no, that doesn't do it for me, I'm sorry. Some people really like that kind of gameplay. They really like being on the edge of their seats when any encounter could be the end of their character. I ain't about it. So as you can probably tell, I am much more a storyteller. And I think that probably comes across with everything I've said and just the way that the system works. But the reason I mention it is because motivation is also a you thing. And it can help you to figure out why you're playing a role-playing game and how that might translate into motivation for what you want your character to do. And it can be something broad as like, oh, I enjoy telling a good story. You can narrow that down and distill it into, for instance, figuring out that, okay, so maybe you want your character has a motivation to do one thing, but what you as the player want to do is actually you want to subvert that and have them do something else. So you might be playing, for example, a character who starts out as a wannabe noble hero, right? And he's going to start out as like a fighter or maybe a paladin even, or something along those lines. And his ambition is to be a hero and save the world. However, you want to see that subverted, and you want to see him, maybe it fits the story to see him lose faith in either his god or the people or the kingdom or just the idea of goodness. Maybe he gets out there, he's a brave, naive, optimistic character, and then he sees just an apathetic world. He sees the horrors of battle and war and all the stuff that adventurers are usually part of, and that really tarnishes his view on the world. And he ends up becoming someone a lot darker than when he first set out. So you've got these two motivations, your motivation and the character's motivation. And for PCA, the important part is you've got to ask yourself, what kind of story do you want to see your character go through? And these don't have to be like this massively different thing. These things can align. Most of the time they do. Most of the time, a character's motivation will mirror the motivation that you have for that character. You might want to play someone who is just a little ball of chaos and they love causing problems on purpose, but they're still a good character at heart, and that just aligns perfectly with the kind of character that you want to play. You just want to play a character who is ultimately a good guy, but is there to have fun by causing a little bit of chaos. That's fine. At that point, your motivation for what you want to see in the game lines up perfectly with the character's motivation because they're practically one and the same. It's just these will help you figure out what you're doing per session, or it helps you figure out what you're doing. If you know your character's motivation, you are rarely going to be stuck in a position where you don't know what to do, or you're just kind of like sat around twiddling your thumbs. If you know, at least if you know broadly what your character's goal is, you can figure out, okay, this is what they need to do, or this is what I should be looking for to get that character to, a step closer to where they want to be. And your motivation can change over time, of course, that's fine, but it's a good idea to have a basic motivation nailed down early on. I will point out as well, the rulebook does go through this stuff as well. The fluff for making a character and all that kind of stuff. It is all in there. I'm going to pull that over here, actually. OBS, can you sit there for me, please? Thank you. Thank you, John OBS. Okie dokie. Let's go. Character creation. I'm pleased I got all this in 40 pages as well. In the book I do talk about where your character's motivation comes from. That can be important, for sure. But if you have a motivation in mind, if you have a goal that you want them to go for, right, and motivation, all motivation is, just to round this off, motivation equals goals. What do they want to get done? What do you want to see them get done? This can be a single thing or a process. So it doesn't have to be just, a single simple thing like, oh, they want to get, they want to get the Sword of Selection and rule England. That's actually an example of two things. Getting the Sword of Selection would be a single instance thing, which, you can have a motivation that is a single instance thing. The problem is, once you've done that, you do kind of need to replace it with something else. Or, retire the character and bring in something else. Whereas a process is just like a longer term thing. Oh, that is annoying. There we go, we're free. We're free of the BitTune hell. Oh, is that what stream looks like right now? Alright, if you insist. Ugh, wow. It's just super zoomed in, that's all. Okay, so let's move on from motivation. Okay, so point 2, as I was kind of alluded to, form. This is less important, but this is where did those goals come from? Or really, why is the question. Why do they want what they want? So now we're firmly into doing things for character. This is no longer... This isn't a question for you. This is a question for the character. It's important that, like, your character has a motivation. It can be helpful for you to understand your motivation. You don't need to understand the form for your own motivation. That is something that you can discuss with your therapist. For the character, though, it's kind of important to know where their motivation comes from. And there is a whole wealth of possibilities here. Everything from just, like, a pure upbringing, Superman style, to specific instances, a lot of... I think a specific instance is a powerful thing for a lot of people to have. I think a specific instance generally lends itself a bit better to compelling storytelling. To have, like, a specific part that a character can point to and go, this is the part where I decided that this is what I have to do, or that this is what I want, is more interesting, and you can... Certainly a GM can do more with that than, well, my character's always felt this way. I think my character's always felt this way. It's fine, but it is bland. And it doesn't necessarily give your GM a whole lot to work with, so try to tend away from it. But it's not the end of the world if you can't. This is the thing. If you find yourself with, like, ideas that seem really bare bones or, like, seem really cop-outy, and you're like, oh, that doesn't feel good enough, it's fine. It's better than nothing. And, like, cop-outy or generic, yeah, they're not perfect, but, again, 1,000 times better than nothing. You can always expand on these things as well. So, yeah, this is just figuring out why your character believes what they believe, and yeah, it can be as simple or as complicated as you want. I would recommend towards simple. This is a really good point to start subverting expectations. So, I'm going to explain something with a bit of a personal gripe. As I may have said on stream before, I hate Rian Johnson as a storyteller. Because he sucks at it. Now, I despised Star Wars The Last Jedi, but not for the usual reasons, you know, I'm not a fucking groiper, right? It's nothing to do with, oh, well, she's a girl and there's no white males in there and blah. I don't care about that stuff. I didn't like it because it was a shit film, but more than that, it was a shit film that went out of its way to spit on the work of previously established film canon lore. I'm talking about Luke Skywalker, of course, you know, paragon of hope in the Star Wars universe, like, the embodiment of hope. You know, the one, like, arguably the one true Jedi, did not give up on Darth Vader when literally everybody else had, including, and not limited to, everybody he'd grown up with, his own mentor, who was as a brother to him, every single authority and parental figure he could have had remaining. even to a degree, I would argue, even his wife. That was harder to argue, but, well. Hey, that's the fun of these things. You know, but no, Luke didn't give up on him. Why? Because hope. He's quite literally the new hope. Anyway, Rian Johnson's idea of subverting expectations is to just completely change an already established character. And then when people go, hey, I didn't like that, proceed to call them man babies and, well, just generally not be particularly good towards his audience. He's just not a particularly good storyteller. I have many other gripes, but I'm going to save it. That is not how you do subverting expectation. That's how you do just kind of whipping the rug out from under people. I mean, yeah, no one's expecting it, because it doesn't make any goddamn sense. So, the way that you actually do subverting expectation is you set up something that people are not already familiar with, and this doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be, typically you can do it with an already established archetype. You know, something like the kind, or the noble knight, the aloof princess, the simple villager, yeah, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, all these archetypes that we're already very familiar with, very used to. And then you change them, you flip them on their head. A lot of feminist literature, we're talking about Rian Johnson, so we'll talk about feminism just briefly. A lot of and that's going to turn some people off, I can already feel it, but bear with me, bear with me. A lot of feminist literature is actually really good at that. Angela Carter does it a fair amount. Primarily because a lot of her stuff is feminist retellings of things. She wrote The Bloody Chamber, which is a collection of short stories that are, at the very least, inspired by, but there's a few in there that are retellings of classic fairy tales from a feminist perspective. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I had my gripes about it, but in terms of subverting expectations, it actually does it very well. Because it sets up things that you're already familiar with and then turns them on their head. This is something that you can do in your own role-playing. And it's really not all that complicated. You set up a character, for example, we'll stick with the Noble Knights thing. You can set up a paladin, right? Who starts out as, you know, a naive adventurer who wants to, you know, make the world a better place, all in service of their god, who then becomes disillusioned with it later on. The traditional thing would be to have them just continue on and, you know, find their god or find goodness and yada yada yada. But you don't have to do that. Particularly with something like PC8. See, in Dungeons and Dragons, your options here would be pretty limited. And you'd have to do a lot of work with the GM, and the GM would have to do a lot of work within certain frameworks to make this happen. But what you can do is you can go, well, after a certain amount of time of living in a kind of like disillusioned sort of mentality, this paladin is going to give up on his faith. Right? That is a path that you can go down. Now, usually that means becoming an Oathbreaker or an anti-paladin or a Death Knight or something like that. But maybe you don't want to swing that hard. Maybe you don't want them to turn into an evil, vicious bastard. You just want them to change their outlook on... They lose faith in their god, basically. So you don't want them to be a Death Knight or an anti-paladin or anything like that. But you do want them to fundamentally change. They don't have faith in their god anymore. Maybe they don't have faith in any of the gods. They still believe they're up there, but they don't think that they care. If their god was so great, how could they turn a blind eye to all this suffering, perhaps? So you want to go something more middle of the road. Well, in D&D you'd have to do something like... maybe your GM could convince you to swap out your levels, or you could convince your GM to let you swap out your levels Paladin for Fighter, representing you stepping away from the faith but picking up more combat skills, because now you have learned that you, in order to survive in this world, you've got to fight for your corner, you've got to steel yourself. And of course, you run the risk of the GM saying, no, you picked to play a Paladin, you're playing a Paladin. Maybe they'll let you change gods, but that's... well, does that really solve the problem? Is one god better than another? Maybe not for your character. Well, what do you do then? In PCA, it's pretty simple. You'd simply change whatever abilities your god gave you for something else. That's it. You don't have to worry about reclassing, you don't have to worry about, oh, is the thing, I'm losing all these abilities. Well, you do have to worry about I'm losing these abilities or replacing them with new ones, but it's a one-for-one switch. This is because the tweaking of abilities is something that's just kind of expected with PCA. You are much less at risk of your GM saying, hey, no, you can't do that, especially if you make it clear that this is something that you are looking to do as part of your motivation, or even just like as the story's progressing, if you can see that that's a road you may go down, saying to your GM ahead of time, yeah, it's a lot easier to do. But that's an example of subverting expectations. Is to have a character that seems like they're going to go down one path, have them go down another. Staying roughly in theme, the Mercenary with a Heart of Gold is a classic, although it's so common at this point that it doesn't really subvert expectations anymore. I like doing things with princesses, personally. I think the princess archetype, especially like a more stuck-up kind of almost bratty princess, is a lot of fun to mess around with if you have them actually being competent at something. A lot of the time you'll see them doing this tsundere thing where they pretend not to care but actually they do. Again, just because it's kind of common doesn't mean it's not subverting expectations. But if that's the kind of thing that you want to do, figuring out where your character's motivation comes from is a good way of doing that. You don't have to, of course. You can play it entirely straight if you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. I only mention it now because it can be a good way to make a character more interesting, particularly if you've played a few role-playing games, but you're not, like, super-duper experienced. If you've got a couple of campaigns under your belt and you want to try something a bit spicier, yeah, why not consider flipping the script on where your character's going and what their deal is. So, you figured out motivation, you figured out form. The other thing with form, or where did your motivation come from, is that it can better inform you for later motivation as well. So, longer term beyond your first, like, couple of goals. Right, that's another thing. You don't have to have just one motivation on your character, you can have multiple. It's worth knowing which one's the most important for your character, but if you don't, I mean, hey, that's not a problem. You don't have to have multiple, but it can be useful. So, step 3. Detail. This is actually a step that you can skip, but again, the more of this kind of stuff you can figure out for your character pre-game, the more you're going to have going for you. And you can figure these out, like, as you go as well, but... Again, you don't have to. If this is something that you're sat on and your wheels are spinning and you're just not going anywhere, you can move on. That's fine. But detail, this is the extra bits. So you can figure out stuff like family, where they came from, and that doesn't just have to be, like a physical location. Are they rich or poor? Were they educated? Was it an easy or a hard life? And if you can add a Y onto any of these, helpful, good stuff. But again, you don't have to figure out every single little detail. The important stuff. Okay. Interesting. Much better. Okay, maybe... You know what, we'll just go with the patently evil music, it's fine. It's fine, don't worry about it. Right, like I was saying, you don't need... No, this is too distracting. Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Nice. Okay. We did it. We escaped the evil music. Okay, so, as I was saying... We got it this time. Yeah, if you can add a Y onto there, that's really helpful. Just explain it a little bit more. What you don't need to do is you don't need to worry about having every single detail mapped out. You don't need to know every single bit of your character's family tree. You don't need to know their favorite music, the regional fucking crop yields. I know there's some elitists out there who are like, well, if you... And, this goes for DMs so strongly. There are some elitists out there who are like, oh, you need to know every single aspect of your world before you can start... Before you can even think of running a game or writing a novel, because usually these two things go hand in hand. Who will be utter purists about your world building, who will be like, you need to know the local customs, the traditions, you need to know the fucking seasonal cycles, and you need to know the festival days, how long's the week. And honestly, if they're important to your story, yeah, of course you do. If it's important to the story, you need to know the details of where your characters can, for example, go to school. How long are their classes? What's the curriculum? However, if your game takes place nowhere near a fucking school, you don't need to know any of that shit. It does not matter. Do not let purists keep you from making a game, running a game, writing a story. Because I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, you don't need to know the details they insist upon. And that's gonna upset people. But you know what? Be upset about it. Because it just does not matter. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't prepare to some degree if you're a GM. Your players will do stupid shit. They will ask you questions you're not prepared for. The more of those that you can field, the better. But again, don't worry about it. And honestly, sometimes just having to make something up on the spot can lead to interesting little developments for your game and your story. I was listening to a story today about someone who made up a a ghost brothel in an attempt to curb a problem player's, well, probleming, and it actually became a major plot point for that player because they, TLDR, they wanted to free the ghosts. Yeah. So, yeah, don't worry about having every detail mapped out. You don't need every detail mapped out. But the more details you can have hammered out, the better. And for those of you who are still like, it still sounds like a big deal, this can be a couple of sentences. Especially if you're putting a why on there. If you can answer why any of this was the way it was, fantastic. But really, what this is doing, this is putting a face on your character. Particularly if you intend on having weird stuff with your character, which is anything not normal about their background, race, and so on. And that can be stuff like magic, it can be your... Let's just get that. Pop that there. Strange abilities. Special items. Where'd they come from? Slash. Cool. So if you've got stuff like magic or special abilities or whatever, this is a good place to explore that and figure out where they came from, why you have them. What are we listening to? Okay, well. Fine by me. I'm sure I'll get DMCA'd for it. It is slightly louder than I'd like, though. There we go. So yeah, any of like the weird aspects of your character, the details are a really good place to explain them, examine them, tell us where they came from. Don't make the whole thing about those. We want to know about your character, but this is a really good place to explain those things. Step 4. Conclation. Or Motivation 2. So, Motivation 2, we're repeating Motivation 1. Find another motivation, ask where it came from. What this does is it adds a bit more depth to your character. What you don't want to do is make them two things that are utterly incompatible. Or two things that are pulling you in like opposite directions all the time. For example, if you have a character that is motivated to do well in their job, whatever that job is, but then you also have another motivation that is wants to... they want to lead a life where they're a family man. Well, those two things can jive, but it's also quite easy for them to run counter to each other. And that can be good, but what you don't want to do is put yourself in a position where your character can't do anything because no matter what they do, they are always going against one of their motivations. Think about yourself for a second. You are probably motivated by more than one thing. For example, you probably have some motivations around your family. You probably want to be a good person to your family. You want to be a good daughter or son or mother or father or other relation, insert here. Maybe you just want to be a good person in general. But also, you might also be career orientated. You could be inspired to make as much money as you can in order to retire as early as you can to sit around playing role-playing games all day. God knows I am. But I'm also very motivated by my partner. I'm motivated to be a good partner to them, however I can. So, these things don't pull me in different directions, but they're both things that I consider. They're both things that, if I were a character, they would give me places to go. I would always have something that I can do in regards to one of those two things. You don't have to do this. This is not necessary. Or, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not load-bearing. Essential. There we go, that's the word I was looking for. It is not essential. If your characters already come together nicely with a single motivation, that's fine. You can carry on. But, this can be helpful to flesh them out, round them out. And really, this doesn't have to be... does not have to be as important to them as motivation 1. So, this can be something that is what I would call a coordinating motivation, which is, or an orbiting motivation. It's a secondary thing, it is not as important as the first one. Their primary motivation might be their entire reason for waking up in the morning, but motivation 2 could be, well, this is something that would be nice. Their motivation 1 might be, I gotta save the world, but motivation 2 might be, so I can go on a nice holiday to, I don't know, the Sevi Islands. And then our last step, progression. And you'll notice a lot of these kind of tie into each other. I've kind of jumped around a little bit with all of these. It's because they kind of just naturally feed into each other. Progression is simply... this is where do we go? Or how might they change? Now this one's more speculative, because you can't see the future, you don't necessarily know where the GM's planning to take you, and even if the GM knows where they're planning to take you, they don't necessarily know from the outset where your character's going to end up. They don't... Because players are such a volatile thing, a lot of the time, even the GM's most well-laid plans can frequently be overturned and interrupted by, we'll say, adventurous parties. So bear that in mind, and this can link back to your own motivations. And you want to keep it broad. Well, it helps to keep it broad. It helps to keep an open mind. You might have a specific idea of where you want them to end up as. And generally, a good GM will They will fulfill that. But you might find that motivation, or you might find that changing partway through. So it's always a good idea to keep an open mind. Okay, so we've got our checklist here. So let's make us a guy. And you know what, he's a bit generic, but I like the idea of our paladin from before. So we're going to call him... What are we going to call him? I don't know what we're going to call him. We're going to call him Hades. I hope that's not a slur. Okay. Let's figure out Hades, so... Or Hades. So, we're not going to write, we're not going to write it like this for the whole thing, but this is just a good way for us to marshal our thoughts, get everything squared away. So his motive is going to be to save the land and bring glory to his god. Hydra. There we go. So, form. Or where did this come from? This came from a religious upbringing. He was told stories of great heroes as a kid and aspired to be like them. We'll say he grew up poor on a farm where he spent time working to help his father. We'll add in he had a older sister who went on to study at the Mage Guild and a scholarship. And you can see we've kind of already jumped ahead to making a second motivation here. He wants to prove himself just as impressive as she is. Okay, so we've kind of already, just in thinking about where his motivation came from, that's kind of spiraled into, we now know more details about him. You know, he heard these stories as a poor child growing up on a farm, where he did a lot of backbreaking work to help his father. He had an older sister who's gone to study at the Mage Guild under a scholarship. Again, they're poor. She would need the scholarship to make that happen. But this has made something of a... It's given him something of a complex, where he wants to prove himself, like he feels inferior to her and he's got to prove that he's worthy, almost. Cool, so, details? Well, we can go, see above. Okay, what about the complication? He wants to not quite show her up, but he wants to... He is So he thinks he wants to make her look worse in comparison, but he's actually wrong. And this is something else that you can do. You can say, look, the character thinks they want this, but actually that won't make them happy. What they want is X instead, right? So here we're going, he thinks he wants to make her look bad because he's a petty dick. But he's actually wrong about that. What he really wants is... And again, we have another opportunity to twist things. We can go, well, maybe he wants to... Maybe he actually wants her to recognize him as an equal. Maybe he wants her dead. You know? Maybe he really fucking hates her and doesn't realize it yet. That's a little too dark for me though, so we'll go, what he really wants is her approval. And his parents' recognition. Sweet. Cool. Progression. So he will become disillusioned. Wow, I have horribly misspelled that. That's awful. There we go. He'll become disillusioned with his faith when he... See, what does help as well is if you can type straight, that does usually help. Over his journey, witnessing the horrors of battle and war, and a seemingly uncaring kingdom and pantheon. He will challenge his sister if given the opportunity. This will is unknown. There we go. So we've got places that we can go with this. So, we know, at least broadly, who he is. We know he is a... And we can add some more details here. Starts off joyful and upbeat, but slowly becomes more dour and sardonic. Yeah, that's a word. That's a word we like. Sardonic. Ooh. Okay, so we know now, we have a much better idea of who he is. So, we know he had something of religious upbringing, but not super duper religious. He's not a monk. He's not a cleric. His thing is more the physical side of things. You know, he was told stories about heroes. He wants to be a hero. Maybe his parents are somewhat religious and that's where that comes from. Regardless, he's grown up working farm, so he's probably quite quite a large, strong character. Maybe not large, but certainly strong. Or maybe not. Maybe he was counting grain this whole time. Who knows? It's up to you. You can take that wherever you want. I will take it down the he's strong route, because I'm making the character, but, you know, no reason you couldn't do it slightly differently. We know that he's going to start out as, like, almost your typical adventurer, eager to get the adventure going, eager to do great things. That's going to get beaten out of him. He's going to get colder over the course of the journey. At least, none of this is written in stone as well. So if the game ends up going in a very different direction, that's fine. You don't have to feel like you're locked into him becoming more dour and dark. You don't have to stay locked into the idea of him challenging his sister, even. You do kind of have to stay locked into the background of the character, but you don't have to stay locked into your predictions. But we know he's going to start out in a certain way, and over time he's going to change into something else. You can also add in that, like, he will not turn to evil or darkness due to this. However, he will abandon his faith and replace it with something more tangible. There we go. So that opens up the door. He could decide to change it to a more generic fighter. He could become something more like a rogue, perhaps. The door is open. He doesn't have to go full evil. And that's something that I think is a big advantage of this system over something like D&D, where your options are limited, and either you'd have to make something yourself and hope the DM okays it, or have them make something, or make some weird big sloppy compromise. Which, to be fair, is everyone's second favourite, but regardless. Okay, so we've got our thing in however many boxes. Well, let's make them... What we can do with the Roll20 sheet exactly is we can go take that, and we'll pop that down in the GM notes. Outside of this, we can just save this on a different document, or put it at the bottom of the doc, or if you're not using if you're using pen and paper, you can write this down somewhere else. I have stuff in my eyes, oh god, oh god, oh god. Please save me. But what we can do from here is we can go boop. So now we know our motive, we know our background, we can write a little bit of bio. He's raised to be a hero, working in the fields alongside his father. He grew strong and familiar with many tools and dangerous implements. He told stories of great heroes and before bed was raised to respect all around him. This is all just fluff. But what fluff does is it gives us a... It's emotive. It gives us feeling. It helps us understand the vibes of a character. That's what fluff does. That's what it's all about. This is setting us up with the kind of background that... Okay, so the characters come from like this really kind of homey sort of background. And later on we're going to... Well, later on we are going to foreshadow their losing of that innocence. And we can do it just real bluntly as well. There you go. Just go, hey, he was taught all these things. He was taught the world is a beautiful place and that mercy and love and forgiveness is all around. That would not last. So we can go talk about his sister. You're just gonna have to give me a hot second here, chat, while I just hammer this out. Yeah, that's fine. That should be a capital G, because God is a title. Okay. So, what have we done here? Well, what we've done here is we've gone, here's the background for him. Here's the instigator. So what's actually happened is while he's... we do want to add a little bit of something. It's all around him. He aspired to become a... Okay, cool. So we set up motivation 1, our early motivation, which is to be a hero. That's done here. And really, this paragraph here, our opening paragraph, has been informed by just like the background in broad strokes. Motivation 1, which is, you know, big picture. You can get the big picture of who Hades is from here. Then paragraph 2, we talk about his sister. This is motivation 2, and this is where we do our subverting expectations. Now, you could... You could cut this. You could cut all of this and have him just as your standard adventurer, simple farmhand. He's now going out to make his mark in the world. Boom. Simple. Done. What this does, this here, is it makes our character just that bit more interesting. It adds layers of depth. And you don't need too many layers of depth. Again, no one is expecting you to be a world-class author. No one's expecting you, or no one reasonable, is asking you to put in like this massive amount of work. All anybody's really asking of you is to come to the table with a good idea that you can execute. And you can. You absolutely can. You don't have to put like as much effort and work into it as it seems. But, you know, just have a couple of things about them that the people around you can work with, particularly the GM. And again, with any role-playing game, but particularly PCA, there's no reason to keep things from the DM. There is no reason to hide, like, your ideas or your motivations, because that's not going to help either of you, you know? Cool, so now we have an idea of who our character is. Doing the stats and stuff should be really easy. At this point, they're a starting out character. They're pretty new to all this. I think it's fair to say their combat's not going to be incredibly great. Certainly not their best stat. Oh no, it's probably going to their physical. They've had an upbringing where they are, you know, going to church, working on a farm, and that's about it. If we wanted, we could change it around. Oh, wait, no, this slaps. Oh, I see. Okay. Of course it's more Star Rail stuff. We could have it so that rather than tilling the fields, they were doing, like, the accounting and stuff. Or maybe they were, you know, more of a scholar is what I'm trying to go for. You can sort the physical for mental, but again, that's not the character that I'm writing. Their mental's not going to be great. It's probably going to be their weakest stat. They're not really a thinker. Social, it can be whatever. It can be the D8, it can be the D10. You might want to do a bit of metagamey stuff here, which is to go, well, they want to be a fighter. So we want their combat to be at least somewhat good, but they're not really going to be talking to people. D8 for the social. There we go. Cool. Skills. Now, they're going to have some skills that are a bit weird. Well, not weird, but... certainly they're going to be... They probably have some melee ability. I forgot how to spell melee then. Put a solid 2 into melee. And they can probably throw a bit of a mean punch. So 2 in unarmed. The question is, are they any good at fighting unarmed? I mean, they've gone off to be an adventurer, we can assume they've done a little bit of practicing. Cool. There's an argument that they should have medical. After all, you're using dangerous implements on a farm quite commonly. However, I think strength and toughness are natural fits. But really, there's nothing to say that you have to do something one way or the other. You can take whatever skills you want. I mean, if you really want to. Now, deceit wouldn't be something that you'd usually anticipate with this kind of character, but hey, maybe. Maybe he just has a silver tongue. Maybe he's been good at sneaking around and not really being caught, or talking his way out of problems, more so than you might think. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool, we've got 2 more points to play with. Overall, when you're making a character, you should absolutely take things that it makes sense for them to have, but don't be afraid to throw in a couple of wildcard options in there if you can justify, to some degree, having them. It's hard not to be able to justify having something like deceit or perhaps intimidation. Magical knowledge might be a harder one for you to sell on this character. For us, though, we are going to take... he's not the smartest lad. We'll take 2 points of intimidation. I like to order them so that the strongest skills are at the top, but order this however you want. You can do it alphabetically, you can do it just in the order that you found them and picked them. You can group them up into like, oh, these are like combat ones, these are physical, so on and so on. Cool. So, now we need to figure out items and abilities. We know he doesn't have magic, so we're not going to bother with that. And we'll just do one of each for now. Okay, so this is where we have to do a bit of thinking, and this is where having a well thought out backstory is really going to come in handy for us. So he doesn't really have anything special in terms of items. We've not written about any sort of handed down heirloom items or anything like that. Although we could add them in if we wanted to, we've not thought of it before, so I'm going to skip past that. Instead, we're just going to go for 2 special abilities, and I think these are abilities that can really tie in to our backstory. So what we want to do is he's an adventurer, he's probably got some minor, not magic, but probably some sort of ability representing something from his god. So right now, while we're working on it, we can go in very broad strokes from his god. And then we want something for his sister. Now that's broad, but what I'm thinking is an anti-spell thing. So the thing with this is that he's always resented his sister. It would make sense that he has something. He's becoming a bit of a bastard in my head, is the thing. He's becoming a bit of a dick. So maybe the whole thing is that when he learned his sister was going to be a mage, he decided to specialize in anti-mage stuff. Because we know he's planning on confronting his sister. We already said so in our design notes. He'll challenge her if given the opportunity. It makes sense that he would plan something out. Now, your characters may not be like that. They might not have the same kind of motivation. But they will have a motivation, they will have motivations, plural, hopefully. So it makes sense that your items, your abilities, would help your character reach those goals. There is no point in me carrying around, for example, there's no point in me carrying around like a full tool belt of equipment if I don't plan on using it, right? There's no point in me carrying a plumber's wrench if I don't plan on doing any sort of plumbing. So what we'll do is we will go we'll make up something for his god, which could change. Hamas may well going to whoops, wrong. Go to at the start of the day to gain this benefit. And we know the rule about special abilities, we don't want to make it something simple like just a fucking reroll. Additionally, he cannot be afflicted by any damage over time effects. There we go. So he can't be poisoned, burned, or whatever. Which sounds like a bigger deal than it really is. Damage over time doesn't tend to come up. I mean, you can put it in your games if you want to. It has a footnote at the bottom of the damage section, I believe? But there we go, just 2 minor effects. I say minor. One is a free reroll per day. I mean, that's pretty fucking great. Okay, so something for Sinister, well... we'll call it Spite for the... I really hope none of these things get me DMCA'd. It's going to be very annoying if they do. But I just kind of left YouTube doing its own thing. Okay, let's go over here. Okay. Okay, so make this a anti-magic thing. Like a magic. Area magic. He may physical toughness check. Then the we need to reword this because it's clunky and wrong. Clunky and wrong. roll a my god. Physical. God. They're gonna ream me for that one. Check. Adding toughness. Caster also. Caster rolls a mental check. Adding their knowledge magic. Tile the spells effects, including any damage on it. Ignored. Faster or higher the spells effects on him, including any damage, are ignored. Cool, so he is so bitter about his sister that if he gets hit with magic, he can make an opposed check to just tough it out and not be affected by it. Is that a little strong? Yes, but it's flavorful. This is something that can also be pared down. You can change it from a physical check to a mental check, although that feels quite mean because his mental isn't great. I could change it to be combat for both of them. Yeah, because not every mage is going to have knowledge magic, and it's not really a knowledge thing. Yeah. And opposed. Combat. Well, we don't call them checks. Roll. Adding his toughness. The opponent adds their attack. Cool. And then this is the magic matrix as you kind of have to do it on Roll20 because they've not put in a way to put a graph on here, to my knowledge. If you can find a cleaner way of doing like a cross-axis, I would love to hear it, but we can ignore that for Hamas because he doesn't have magic, and I think he'd be quite upset if he did. Oh. Huh. Isn't that neat? Oh, I've called him Hamas, but his name was Hadas. Well, actually, we're going to go back to Hadas, because I've realised that's actually a thing, isn't it? Oh well. There we go. That is a complete character from nothing. Ah, I see. It gives him a little star next to... Oh, you guys can't see that. Hang on, there's a little star on his thing. Because he's a party member. Isn't that nice? He's a bit of an edgelord, our Hadas, but hey. Alright, let's move on. There was one other thing I wanted to do tonight before we wrap up, and that is character creation for a character that I already know very well. Let's get him in here. Okay, so this is Arfiel. Everyone say hi. Yeah. He's a problem. But god damn it, he's my problem. Yeah, so the name Arfiel pops up a few times in the book, and this is who it's referring to. So, Arfiel has had quite the storied history, but as his lore stands right now, his job is he's part of a intertextual, I guess. Basically, his job is to go into stories that have yet to finish, or that are at threat of not finishing properly because of other outside interference, and making sure they resolve nice. Basically, he's now part of a setting that has characters from... So the idea is that a story is a real thing. Like, a real dimension that exists parallel to our own, that can be travelled to, and yada yada yada. And that all stories are happening at some point along the same timeline. So some stories have ended, we know the endings to them, their characters end up, they don't stay in their story forever. Like, once the story is finished being told, the universe may remain, but, like, important enough characters will end up in another central place where they can then go and influence other stories. Don't worry, Bessies, all of your problematic favourites are there. Yeah, it cuts both ways. There's, like, bad guys that can go around and doing things. It's very light-hearted, it's very, It's very soft, kinda. Don't think about it too hard. I'm sure if you think about it too hard, you'll be able to pick all sorts of problems with it. You know, oh, wouldn't these guys do this, and wouldn't these guys be a problem? Yes, probably. But generally speaking, you know, the forces of good match the forces of evil, and usually the forces of good win, because that's how these things go. But yeah, so... in the game that I'm running now, he's kind of on vacation. Where he came from is he was in his own story. Earth became like super duper end stage capitalist, and also very fascist, very much overnight. There was a big erasure of history and all that stuff. 100 years later, he's part of a super soldier program that isn't very nice to him, or anyone in it for that matter. And at some point during his deployment, he ends up taking a trip through a wormhole. He ends up in a story that isn't his, and he spends all this time trying to get back to where he came from. But he never does. So he's kind of like constantly a man lost in space. Until eventually he ends up in this, like, meeting place of worlds. You know, the place where almost everybody ends up. So, what is my problematic fave doing? Well... See, it's difficult for me because I don't want to give too much away, because I think there's a chance that some of my players may be watching. But it's fine. He's not a major spoiler. They already know he's around. So, what's his motivation here? But what I don't want to do is spoil other characters. Okay. This puts me in an awkward predicament. Okay, well, I can talk about him in a more general sense. So, his motivation is to... So, he thinks... Or he pretends... that it's to oppose evil. Really? It's to live a comfortable... Okay, so there's three things going on here. He pretends that it's to oppose evil. And while he does oppose evil, that's actually not the main drive. He thinks it's to live a comfortable and easy life. In reality, it's to look after the people he cares about. Where? So where did this come from? After being lost from his own story and experiencing man to many different places, come to comb to value the friends he has now. Details. Okay, so we know he was a soldier in the ADV program. He was admitted because of his latent psychic abilities. He's also a weenie. He is. His weakest stat is physical, and I usually put in a drawback. So one of the things with Arthur is that I initially wrote him when I was like 15. So a lot of me went into him. Right down to disability. I have dyspraxia. It is a interesting little disability. It means that my balance, my hand-eye coordination are both pretty fucking shot. I'm not as... My reflexes aren't as good as I'd like. My balance is not as good as I'd like. My precision is dog shit, quite frankly. It's a pain. I almost fall over so fucking often. I don't actually fall over because I've had a life of almost falling over, and I've learned to catch myself. Sometimes I'll just drop shit for no good reason. Like, my hands will just go, yeah, so we're just not going to hold on to this. I've yet to do it with anything like fragile. They seem to get the message that, hey, things like glasses and cups need to be held properly, but, you know. Oh, you're picking up some Lego? No, you're not. Ah, well, fuck me. It's frustrating. It's annoying. But, yeah, with it. So some of that went into Arfiel, and what that's manifested in is... I wanted him to have, like... Right, so I wrote him for a sci-fi setting, so you don't tend to have magic in sci-fi settings. So you tend to replace that with, like, psychic. So he can do space magic, but he needs a drawback. So physically, he is super duper weak. In fact, he's so weak that his muscles physically cannot move his body. usually this would mean he is just stuck, right? Like, he just couldn't fucking move, except he lucked out. He's psychic, and he has, through his psychic powers, he's learned to be able to effectively puppeteer himself using his own psychic abilities. He doesn't even fucking realize he's doing it. That's the funny thing. But if he's ever cut off from his psychic powers for whatever reason, he's just going down like a bag of potatoes. So, canonically, he's a fucking weenie. He can't, like... He doesn't have, like, the physical strength that other characters have. He compensates with his psychic abilities. Okay, he was assigned as a protector. Mentored by New York. Floppant. Cool. So we've got a bit of a physical. A little bit of a physical. He's built like a twig. Okay, we've got a bit of a physical description. We've got some character about him. Yeah, he's a cat person, not like, you know, he has a fucking tail and goes nyah, but he likes cats. Cool. Cool, well, motivation 2, or complication. We're gonna pass on that. This? Well, I guess we can expand on that. Mentor to... He wants to ensure they succeed, but also that they're able to grow past him. And then progress. Progression. Well, we don't need to worry about progression. That's a beautiful thing. I don't have answers for progression right now, but I also don't need them. He's not a PC, he's an NPC. His progression isn't super important. He's someone who could help the party, he could be an antagonist, it's really down to them. But we're keeping our options very open here because I don't really know what's going to happen there. Alright, so let's talk about his stuff. Well, he's a soldier, so that's getting a D10. Now you might think, whoa, hold on. He's a soldier, surely that should get the D12. Well, he's more of a talker than he is a fighter. He's still a very good fighter, and arguably, there's a very thin line between these two for him. But he does tend more towards the dealing with things socially when he can. Physical, of course, is going to be his weakest, D6, and mental, by virtue of elimination, has to be a D8. Skills. Now, I'm making an NPC who is stronger than first level characters. He's been around the block. This isn't his first rodeo. There is no fixed way of doing this, but the more that you do it, the better you'll get a feeling for how much a character should have. If in doubt, don't go more than double what your players have. So we're going to give Arthur a few things here. We're not going to go much higher than maybe 15 skill points. And what I would say as well is, while you don't have to do this, it's not a bad idea to stay in the 3-point bracket that the players will be at on character creation, which is to say, don't start any skill with more than 3 points on it. So, ranged, 3, melee, that can have 3. Me! There we go. Unarmed, we will skip that entirely. Medical. We'll put in some stealth. He's good at the intuition. He's pretty good at persuasion, but not the best. What have we got? 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Put 1 point in leadership. Perception. What I'd really like to do is, I'd like to add another line to this, but I don't know if I can. Okay, that's fine. I would like to add a deception in here, but we'll stick to the 10 as well. I don't want this like spiraling out of control. Cool. Let's figure out his magic. So his magic is going to be domain. So his domain is protection, and it is it's pretty mid in terms of power and speed. However, it is very short-ranged, but super high potential. We could add some more special abilities here, some more signature items. But for now, we're going to keep him on roughly the same level of stuff as our other character here, Hadus. So there we go. So what does protection do? Well, protection, I feel a wide mix of abilities, all geared to helping him protect his allies in particular is manifest in 3 particular ways. Short, rapid teleportation allows him to reposition to better cover allies, intercepts, attacks. Close distance to them, and so on. Barriers of NG allow him to deflect attacks and what is from harm. Finally, his can be used to heal wounds. There we go. Cool. So here we've laid out specific ways that his powers can be used, because they're very protection as a domain is a very broad term, and it's something that is not necessarily something that you can immediately just be like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that does, like off rip. Whereas fire, it's a lot easier to be like, oh okay, so they can probably like throw firewalls and stuff. But no matter what domain you're using, it is a good idea to sit down with your GM and go, okay, these are the specific things I would like to be able to do. And you might be thinking, well, why not a spell list? Because that's lame. Because a spell list would mean you have to read all of those spells and pick out which ones work for you, and ugh. Why do that when I can simply give you the tools to determine your own spells, how your domain, well, what your domain could be? Here's the thing, you're limited by a spell list. Even if I make the widest spell list imaginable, if the exact thing that you want to be able to do with your magic isn't on there, hey, guess what? Now you have to run that by the GM, you got to get their approval, you got to make it yourself. Or I can just go, well, here's a broad framework that you have to stick to, right? A domain. You can do anything in that domain as long as, one, the GM says, yeah, that's okay, and again, GMs, I would advise, this is a lot easier because I'm the one running this character, I'm also the one running the game, as long as I know, hey, he's not going to upstage the party, and I keep that under control, there's not going to be a problem. And he won't upstage the party because he's not a part of it. Be careful, GMs. Do make sure you put certain limits on your magic users, because otherwise it can be quite easy for them to run away with the game. You can always reel things in. There is a magic tempo option. I am cooking up a second option for limiting magic users if it's needed. It might not be needed. Your magic users might be completely fine, quite honestly. But magic's the one thing that I'm like, I personally am like, I want to keep a close eye on it. But if that's not how your game's shaking out, then hey, don't worry about it. There we go. And of course, this could also be translated into a whole thing here, but we've gone over on time anyway, so I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is... Wonderful. What we are going to do is we are going to find someone to raid. Who are we going to raid? I do not know who we're going to raid. Who are we going to raid? I don't even know who's live. Oh, Tora's live. Yeah, we'll probably raid Tora. She's playing Digimon, so if you like Digimon, great. If you don't, come along anyway. In any case, I have been Callum. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this has been useful. But as I say, keep an eye on the YouTubes and all that stuff. You short about the game going up tomorrow. Let me know if it's great or if it's shit. I think it might be shit. I will be honest, I don't think it's good. But hey, I did what I could in the very limited time that I had. I'm trying. I'm trying. Alright. I've been Callum, thank you all so much for watching. We will be back on Friday. I'm not sure what we'll be doing on Friday. I have not yet decided. So come along, find out with me. It's going to be great. Until then, take care, stay safe, and have a good evening. Have a good life. Have a good lunch. Right, take care, everybody.
Right.